Good evening, and excited to welcome everyone to this next session of Secure Our Streets conference. My name is Scott Shahan. I'm coming to you from Indiana in the United States, and we have Danila, who's coming from Hungary in Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary, right? And I'm excited to introduce you all to him. So he is the head of security assessment at PCAutomotive. And let me read up on his bio. So Danila is an application security engineer and a bug bounty hunter with more than 8 years of experience in security assessment for automotive, industrial, banking, and networking solutions and desktop applications. So he has a wide background in security assessment. His favorite projects are those involving a bit of soldering and hardware analysis and a lot of heavy reverse engineering, all to find those impactful bugs hiding in the depths of embedded devices, solutions, and technologies. At his current job, Danila oversees the development of new security services, leading various security evaluations, documenting and presenting research results, conducting responsible vulnerability disclosures, and sharing knowledge with his colleagues and the community. Danila has previously spoken at various hacking conferences, including Recon Brussels, Positive Hack Days, Syscan 360, and Standoff. So I will turn the time over to you, Danila, and looking forward to hearing your talk today. As a reminder, really quick, as I lead the stage, please give the Q&A tab a look and enter your questions on the Q&A tab. At the end, about the last 8 minutes, we'll go through the highest ranked questions and have Danila answer those. Okay, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for your introduction. Let me share my slides. Okay. Hello. Welcome everyone to my talk named Walking Through Walls, the Real-World Approach to Vehicle Security Assessment. This is Secure Our Streets 2023, and we are just about to start. First, a couple words about myself. I'm a bug bounty hunter and security researcher who started working in the security area in 2012, and it's about 11 years, among which 8 years in offensive security and security research. Yeah, my favorite targets are embedded systems, and currently I'm working as head of security assessment with PCAutomotive, focusing on automotive security domain. And as a short intro about our company, who we are, and also as an attention drawer to show you the most impactful finding we were able to reveal. I'm about to share a video about us. And here we go.
Welcome to PCAutomotive. Located in the heart of Europe, we are a group of experienced researchers and professionals with one central goal: to secure the transportation sector and better protect human lives everywhere. After months of deep research, PCAutomotive's security experts have found critical vulnerabilities in this vehicle's infrastructure. A would-be attacker needs only a few seconds of access to install a communication device. Our researchers have assembled such a device using widely available components such as a Raspberry Pi, a modem, and a power bank. This device can be placed anywhere inside the vehicle, along with a wireless OBD connector, also available everywhere. This combination opens the car's communications to a private server controlled by the would-be attacker. Now the hacker has access to the diagnostic channel of the vehicle from anywhere in the world. Anytime your vehicle is left alone, it becomes vulnerable. Valets, car washes, checkups with the mechanic, and even a run to the local grocery store all become dangerous entry points. Exploring these findings further, PCAutomotive has discovered that we are able to monitor and track the vehicle, collecting GPS and other telemetric data. We can also control many functions of the car, including brake lights, turn signals, windows, and door locks. With this groundbreaking discovery, we had to make sure it was real, so we headed to the track to test it out. most critical of all, a bad actor would be able to exploit these findings to remotely shut down the vehicle moving at any speed. PCAutomotive, driven by security.
As you saw, we were able to control the engine of the vehicle via OBD interface, and I will go into explain the details later in my talk. First, the short agenda, what we're going to cover today. I would like to first introduce you the test environment and research target, which maybe you already recognize the vehicle from the video, would be the SKODA SUPERB. Then I will introduce our approach to black box vehicle security analysis. And then we will go through identified security issues as examples that can be found in the vehicle, in the modern vehicle. And I would like also to go through our responsible disclosure process, how we did it, and then finish with some short closing part. With all that being said, let's start from the introduction part. To do vehicle security analysis, you will probably need two things, the lab and the garage, or a combination of the two. The lab is the place where you can do research of electronic components, search for hardware vulnerabilities, disassemble ECUs, and see what's inside. The garage is the place where you can put a vehicle and do some testing while staying warm and dry. As security researchers, sometimes we have to look under the hood to find interesting ECUs and the way how they are interconnected with each other. So we spend a lot of time interacting with the vehicle and testing it. Here's the target of our today's talk. It's a modern SKODA SUPERB III, manufactured in 2022 with the latest MIB3 infotainment unit, plus the My SKODA application and the backend. So the SKODA applications talks with the backend, and backend talks with the vehicle. And during my talk, I will focus on the infotainment unit as an example, but the similar approach, similar research approach can be applied to other ECUs as well, although certain knowledge might be required for certain ECUs such as telematic control unit. And here goes our approach. We will start from vehicle intelligence gathering, which I divide into passive and active phase. And where passive phase does not require us to interact with the vehicle, we do everything by searching the internet. And the active phase actually requires us to interact with the vehicle, to obtain more information about it. And we will start with the passive phase, and we're trying to identify wiring schemes. That could be found on the internet, sometimes at car forums. For modern cars, it's sometimes not that easy to identify, and the reliable way how to get it is to go to OEMs service portals where you can download technical documents for the car for a small fee. Here on the slide, you can see the example of SKODA Irvine portal, where you can purchase like hourly or even daily access to, or in, like more long-term access to the engineering documentation for the vehicle. This functionality is done for the car repair services to be able to, or maybe car enthusiast who wonders how the car is organized and want to fix something. Moving forward, usually vehicles comes with some diagnostic tools intended to be used in the car repair shops to identify some malfunction in the vehicle. So usually these diagnostic tools is a pair of a software part plus a hardware adapter. For Volkswagen, for example, VAS 61554 is the hardware adapter, and Otis engineering software is used to diagnose the vehicle. Next, firmware images to analyze can be available typically only to official service centers. And if you're not authorized to access those databases, you basically have two options: either find the leaked firmware images on the internet or dump firmware from the memory chips in the ECUs. So when you're doing black box security analysis, those two options are all you have. Previous research is always nice to have, but for modern vehicles, sometimes there's none. So it's worth checking the previous generation cars, and some of the tools from previous research could be of use while analyzing latest generations of cars. For example, in our case, we found it useful the VW Flash utility, which allows to pack and unpack the firmware images used by Otis engineering tool to flash the ECUs. And also we were able to identify, for example, the CAN database, CAN frame database repositories where we were able to study the format of certain CAN frames flowing through different in-vehicle buses. To give you one example, we were able to identify the packet that tells all the ECUs that the ignition was turned on, and we used this packet to emulate the ignition on our test bench, which I'm going to introduce soon in this talk. Then, one more important step during the active intelligence gathering phase: if you have the diagnostic tools for the vehicle, you can obtain the list of ECUs. And on the slide, you can see one more screenshot from the Otis engineering tool with certain ECUs installed in SKODA car. Right, and on the left, in the system column, you can see the ECU names, and under the gateway info column, you can see the CAN bus domain to which every ECU belongs to. And also on the right, there are some diagnostic functions that can be performed with each ECUs. For example, the operation called identification, which has the number 001, allows to get the string representation of the ECU ID plus the firmware version of the ECU installed in the car. After we obtain the ECU list and using the information given by the diagnostic tool, we can draw ourselves via so-called network infrastructure for a vehicle. For most of the modern cars, you will probably end up with something similar to what is shown on the slide. So there is a gateway ECU. It's a heart of all communications that interconnects all the CAN domains. And also, gateway acts as a firewall, filtering some traffic flowing between the buses, so that, for example, if a would-be attacker finds a security flaw in the infotainment unit and he or she is able to execute arbitrary code in the infotainment unit and even send arbitrary CAN frames to the infotainment CAN bus, then there is also a gateway that filters some traffic that shouldn't normally go from the infotainment CAN bus to other CAN domains, which include critical, safety-critical ECUs, such as engine control unit, for example, transmission control unit, brake system, and so on. And our goal as researchers during the penetration testing of vehicle is to identify those rules and also to try to search for some packets that still can bypass the rules and maybe cause some security-related issues. To give you one example, probably CAN drive bus and CAN COM4 bus have to be somehow interconnected, at least for the instrument cluster to be able to see the current RPM and speed of the vehicle. Also, apart from CAN network, there might be other connection types between different ECUs in the vehicle. For example, the infotainment unit, if it's connected, if it speaks with the backend via internet, so it has to have some way to go to the internet. And that could be a USB interface to the telematic control unit, or maybe even Ethernet or automotive Ethernet interface. Then moving forward, here's how typically test bench of the vehicle looks like. And this is example for Skoda car. So why we need to build a test bench if we have a real car? First of all, with a test bench, it's much easier to work. You can easily intercept traffic flowing between different CAN buses and see what's really going on backstage. One more advantage is that when we do active tests of vehicle with traditional engine, long hours of research cause the vehicle battery, accumulator battery, to drain in really no time. And with the test bench, we can easily power it up from the laboratory power source and avoid this problem. And also, if we break something in the test bench, it's pretty easy to fix, like to substitute in ECU, while in a real car, it might be problematic. Where to get ECUs and wires for building test benches? Well, I would recommend to check eBay and some automotive disassembly or junkyards nearby, because drowned, crashed vehicles end up being disassembled and sold for parts, and that's where you can get some spare components for cheap. Of course, it's always possible to buy from official dealers and repairing shops the new blocks. However, it will be much more expensive than buying the aftermarket ones. Then one more important part of active information gathering is the hardware enumeration. Here on the slide, you can see the MIB3 infotainment unit and its main hardware components. There is a main CPU, which has several cores, and one core is called CarCom, and it runs a real-time operating system that communicates via CAN bus, while other cores of the main CPU are busy running main operating system, which is Linux, and it draws the UI of the infotainment unit to the user, and does all the backend communication stuff and whatnot. There's also a BGA eMMC chip, which stores firmware for the main SoC. And also there is a small SPI chip that stores low-level firmware, let's say, that includes bootloaders and some configurations. And there is also wireless communication chip on the bottom. Don't forget to check on the other side. In our case, it was one more MCU there, which is called PWC, or power controller chip. Do hardware enumeration properly if you are doing vehicle penetration test. Why? Because at this stage, if you, for example, identify an open debug interface, you will be able later to use it, for example, to test and debug your proof of concept exploit against the system. So it's highly useful to have some debugging capabilities. And also, if you don't find some of the components on the board, which means you will end up with the smaller scope of your research and smaller attack surface. So maybe the outcome of your penetration testing will be not complete. Here's the logical scheme of the MIB3 infotainment unit. You can see the main CPU on the left, the PWC on the center, and PWC actually has the bare metal firmware, so there is no operating system, and it's stored in the internal memory of PWC chip. And pay attention also to three UART channels. UART 0 and UART 1 are going from the main CPU and from the CARCOM core to the PWC, and the UART 2 is external UART that goes to the external connection socket of the ECU. When we obtain firmware of each ECU, we do static and dynamic analysis of it to find some security flaws. And as for the backend and the application, the Android or iOS application, we usually run it in the emulator if that's possible, and try to intercept connection between the app and the backend to see whether there are some weakness there. Actually, those techniques are not new, they are pretty common, so I'm not going to go into details here. And then let's jump to findings. We were able to identify 21 vulnerabilities in total, and today I'm going to disclose 9 of them, while other 12 are still being fixed by the manufacturer, so we have to wait until proper patches are released and pushed to all the customers' vehicles. And we'll start from the low-level findings. Things are going to get technical here, so for those who maybe don't work on a regular basis with low-level things, don't worry, I try to summarize all the impact after each section. And here we were able to identify the debug interface of the PWC chip. However, good news is that it was locked. So if you try to read out memory of the chip and thus obtain firmware, you won't be able actually to do that, because first, to disable the protection, you have to erase the memory content, current memory content. However, we were able to identify the firmware leak in the internet with this firmware package for this PWC chip. So what is possible to do is to erase actually the chip content and flash the firmware once again and get the target with debug capabilities. Then let's focus on the external UART communication of the ECU and see what's there. If you connect to the UART, you will see those lines. And here are 3 things to notice. First of all, there are 2 more UART lines, like UART 0, UART 1. We saw it on the logical scheme. Plus, we see that there is ARM trusted boot enabled. We can see some specific strings like BL2, bootloader stage 2, bootloader stage 3.1, and so on and so forth. And we see that secure boot is active, which is a good sign. Means that we can't really, as would-be attacker, we can't really change firmware, modify it. And then when the system boots, there is a console that is based on the public authentication, so you can't really log in unless you have a private key. So there's no free debug. Here is the summary that typically PWC actually transparently proxies UART 0 to UART 2. And when connecting to the external UART, we are talking with the main CPU rather with the PVC itself. But while checking the firmware, we saw some strange strings in it, which bring us to the thought that maybe there is another console hidden somewhere. And while digging a little bit and poking with the firmware, we saw that actually there is a way to unlock this console. And to do that, what we need to achieve is to send the command on UART 1, which is UART connecting CARCOM with PWC. And that's actually a binary UART channel. There are no strings, and the command format is closed. So we were able to identify the format of the commands, the logic behind it, and however, we were not able to identify any way how to make CARCOM to send this command actually to PWC. so that it opens the debug console. So we just manually attached probes to the test points of this UART1 and send those commands manually. After that, when we connect to UART2, we just can specify PWC followed by a colon, and we enter the PWC debugging console. And to go back to the Linux console, which is, as we remember, closed, we can just type the Q followed by a new line to exit. And what this debug console allows us to do is to perform readout of flash memory content and also to write arbitrary memory content to the flash. So it was possible to modify even firmware. However, to do that, first you need to authenticate yourself by using the subcommand 0x30 of the command U, which stands for updater. And so you have to know the password to unlock the console, which appeared to be hard-coded, and it was pretty creative. Thanks to developers for making this password funny. It always gives you a smile after a long research session to see such a password. Here is the impact of low-level findings. All of them require physical access to the infotainment ECU, so the CVSS score is pretty low. Still, interesting things. So overall impact, it allows you to modify the PWC firmware and then try to maybe attack the Carcom chip via the UART1 because they have the communication and expand your attack surface further. Then application level findings. So the infotainment unit shares the in-vehicle Wi-Fi, and any device can connect to it. For example, Apple CarPlay device can be connected. Apple CarPlay capable device, such as an iPhone, can be connected. And then, in case it's connected, the infotainment unit starts listening on TCP port 7000, handling some HTTP, RTP requests. And if we send a certain request to this port, the infotainment unit just crashes and goes to reboot. However, the attacker has to be in the in-vehicle infotainment Wi-Fi, which is also restricted capability. Then let's quickly observe the backend problems that we identified. So in a nutshell, the backend consists of many API endpoints, and they are divided into 3 groups. First group of endpoints is available to any registered user of Skoda Connect portal. Then there is this yellow group that is only available to vehicle users that are registered as guest users inside a specific vehicle. And then for a vehicle, there might be one primary vehicle user, typically the owner, who has all the privileged control in the vehicle. And to become a primary vehicle user, you have to be inside the vehicle to push a button on the infotainment unit. And to become a guest vehicle user, you don't have to do anything, actually, just to send one web request, and that's enough. And you have to know the VIN number of the vehicle as well. So what can would-be attackers do? They can register as guest users if they know the vehicle VIN number, and then they can easily retrieve the nickname of the owner of the vehicle. So it seems like a nickname exposure and exposure of the binding between the VIN number and the name of the primary user. The nickname, I mean, not the real name, of course. Here's how the web request looked like. And then let's go to another problem, which is similar issue, but it does not require an attacker to become a guest user in the vehicle, but it's just available to anyone registered in the My Skoda Skoda Connect portal. Sorry. And what can be done if the attacker knows the VIN number of the vehicle? He or she can easily obtain the recent information about recent trips, such as vehicle mileage, average speed, some timestamps, so on and so forth, which didn't even require any like confirmation that you have some connection with this vehicle. So you just know the VIN number, and by VIN number, you easily learn the mileage, for example, of the vehicle. All right, here's the summary of impact. We're running a bit out of time, so I'm pretty fast here. Let's go to the diagnostic interface findings. As you know, diagnostic interface typically expose UDS services. Those services allow to test the vehicle, its different functions of the vehicle, and there is a standard security access service which allows to kind of restrict the certain certain critical test functions and hide them behind the authentication. And the security of this authentication depends on how random the seed is and how secure is key calculation procedure. And for Skoda case, it turned out, or for the MIB3 infotainment case, it turned out that the key is calculated by simple arithmetic addition. So it's reversible operation. It can be easily calculated back to reveal the secret. And then if you have a sniff of traffic of the successful authentication, you can easily subtract the seed from the key and get the secret and then perform subsequent authentications by yourself. Or it also turned out that this secret value was hard-coded in the firmware. So if you extract it from there, you can easily kind of repeat the authentication once again. UDS functions allow to do certain tests of the vehicle, for example, activating horns, lights, and so on and so forth. And this functionality is viable for car repair services. We want to be able to test our vehicles, right? So this functionality cannot be actually blocked or completely removed. And however, sometimes this introduce potential for controlling the vehicle using some OBD dongle, OBD interface, and whatnot. And manufacturers, of course, know this issue, this risk rather than issue. And what they do, they implement several layers of protection of this diagnostic interface that you can see on the slide to avoid it being used for bad purposes, right? And from time to time, we keep identifying security issues in all those layers of protection because obviously it's very hard to build like a completely cyber immune system. And here we were able to identify the way how to bypass a speed limitation and with certain UDS command to cause the engine control unit to go to a reboot mode or in certain mode under which it just shuts down the vehicle engine and the vehicle stops. Right, and overall impact is that it's actually possible to disable engine at high speed, which shouldn't normally happen because for diagnostic purposes, you don't have to test actually any capabilities of vehicle at really high speeds, most likely. So should be some speed limitation. But the good news is there is certain restrictions here, and physical authentication is actually required every 20 kilometers. And physical authentication means like you have to open the trunk and then close it, and you get those UDS commands available, UDS interfaces available for you. So you can send the command and trigger the attack. But when the vehicle goes more than 20 kilometers since the trunk was last open, those diagnostic interfaces keep blocked. And also other controls such as mirrors, doors, and all that stuff are protected by speed limitation. If you go higher than 10 kilometers per hour, it's no more possible to activate a horn or fold in mirrors while the car is moving. And of course, access to the OBD port is required, although sometimes it's enough to have one-time short access to just install a device with cellular communication, for example, and be able to control the car remotely. Next, I would like to quickly go through our responsible disclosure experience. Here's the timeline. First advisory was sent to Skoda in November 2022, and right in a month or even shorter than that, They fixed all the backend related issues, and in April 2023 we reserved CV numbers with SRG, and we synchronized with Volkswagen also before publication, because as it turned out, this MIB3 unit is used not only in Skoda cars but in other Volkswagen cars as well. So yeah. Both OEMs acted in a very responsive manner, and they consider security issues in their cars very seriously. And for them, security of vehicle users is top priority. Finally, short closing part. I would like to say thank you to other team members for doing the research. Obviously, it was not done by me alone. And also big thanks to Skoda and Volkswagen security teams for making car better. And special thanks to SRG for registering CV numbers for us as an automotive CNA, and for letting us speak at Secure Our Streets 2023. We have some plans for the future. We will release other vulnerabilities as soon as they will be fixed. We will publish our research related to electronic vehicle chargers as well. And we are planning to release some cool threat intelligence findings soon. Final words is that, like, we see some typical problems or challenges, I would rather say, in the automotive industry. And we really think that doing proper security evaluation at design stage will help us to make everything better, and to avoid maybe sometimes even avoid like costly recall campaigns in the future. We also believe that automotive threat intelligence is a very useful tool to monitor threats related to vehicles, because there's a lot going on in the automotive domain, and we have to be aware about that. So that's why we are trying to maintain, and keep high quality security research services and threat intelligence services to the market, as well as we are developing our in-house vehicle SOC platform for proactive vehicle security monitoring, which is, we believe, also important. Thank you very much for your attention, for staying with me today, and please use contacts provided on the slides if you want to. Later, after the conference, if you want to ask us any questions, we will be happy to hear from you, and I will be happy to answer your questions right now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Danila. That was an interesting talk, and an interesting amount of research that you guys have done there with PCAutomotive to really go through the SKODA vehicle, the back end. I mean, you guys went through about every part of the architecture. Very, very interesting. So we do have a question I'm going to bring up on the screen, and this was from Simon Roger from Germany. Will you stick to these OEMs, or which OEMs are coming next in your targeting for your research?
That's a good question, and no, we are not fixed, not stick to these OEMs. We actually do research of many vehicles available on the market. So hopefully we will come up with more interesting findings soon. Unfortunately, I can't reveal like which OEMs we research in particular, because the disclosure processes are still ongoing. But since they will be finished and the bugs will be fixed, we will be happy to tell our stories about
Awesome. That. Yeah. Looking forward to it. That'll be, I'll keep an eye on. Are you on LinkedIn, Danila?
Yep.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on it. I'll keep an eye out for you on there.
Yeah, check out, for those who is interested in our activities, our research, check out our social networks, check out PCAutomotive social networks such as LinkedIn, and we will try to publish some cool stories there.
So I had a question for you. When you were going through the first part of your talk, when you were pulling apart the ECU and you had the probes going in through the debug port, you mentioned that the debug port was locked. meaning generally, right, you have to provide some sort of long random bit password that's preset, and you have to know that to be able to interface with, might be through, was this through JTAG? Was that through what it was from?
That particular hardware debug interface was SWD, which is single wire debug interface.
Okay.
And that one was locked in a way that it was not protected with the password. Rather, it was protected that if you want to use the debugging capability, you have to send a certain command that erases all chip contents, memory contents, so it becomes clean.
Oh,
like,
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was, I think that makes more sense now. You were able to then erase the chip, and then you're able to reprogram it with your own firmware after that process through the debug access port.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, awesome. I did have a question related to another area of the architecture you guys looked at, and this was the UDS security access. I was surprised to see such a weak algorithm used, just addition with the secret and the seed. What are your thoughts? I mean, have you come into much of the new Service 29? I've heard a lot of this talked about with the, you have the private key authentication type authentication that's going to be protecting UDS. What are your thoughts? Have you seen it? And yeah, just your general thoughts on UDS security access.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to work with this new technology, and I would be actually happy to check it out. Hopefully, I'll have such a chance somewhere in near future.
Yeah.
So I cannot really comment much on that. But in general, for the security of the UDS authentication, well, it's not always that bad, and sometimes we don't have a luck to get access to the ECUs. For example, for this particular car, we didn't identify a way how to get access to EDS interface for example, telematic control unit and other ECUs apart from the infotainment. So it's kind of not always not protected, let's say.
Mm-hmm. The next question I had for you is on, then you went to the remote interfaces through the telematics unit. Now I'm guessing you were interfacing with, you said the backend servers that the OEMs had. You were sending your API connection or your API requests to this backend server, and all you needed was the VIN. There was no authentication for certain API services. Is that was what you were doing in that portion of the talk?
There is an authentication. So how it works? You become first the user of the portal by registering, so it's available to anyone. And then, if you know the VIN number as a user of the portal, if you know the VIN number, you can issue certain requests that allow you to see the information of the vehicle about this vehicle with this VIN number. So yeah, that's how it worked. So the authentication is required, but it does not protecting, because you can create an account easily and go to the portal. This is
okay. And we had I was going to say we did have one question just come in, but I think for time we're gonna call it. We have to wrap it up for this session. So I wanted to have everybody, let's give Danila a reaction, the emoji reaction. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your research. And I look forward to seeing more stuff from PC Automotive. So thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you on next year.
Thank you. We'll be glad to see you next year. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Cheers.